It was November 3rd, 1989, when a man scavenging for aluminum cans stumbled upon skeletal remains along Walcott Road in Franklin County, Ohio. Hidden beneath years of soil and secrets, the bones whispered a story no one could hear. Until decades later, when the relentless march of science and the quiet perseverance of investigators would finally reveal the identity of the long-forgotten victim. For 36 years, the skeletal remains on Walcott Road remained a mystery, a silent witness to a life erased from memory. Law enforcement combed the area, collected evidence, and sought answers, but the tools of 1989 were limited. No identification, no clues, no way to trace the victim's identity. Skeletal fragments, long buried in soil, held microscopic secrets that could not yet be unlocked. Time passed, the world moved on, and the case grew cold, yet the whispers of justice never faded. It wasn't just a puzzle of bones. It was a human story, frozen in uncertainty. Who was this person? Where did they come from? And why had they been left in obscurity for decades? Forensic methods at the time offered nothing but frustration. Generations of investigators came and went, each leaving a legacy of unanswered questions and unfinished work. Then, decades later, a revolutionary approach emerged: forensic genealogy. A combination of cutting-edge DNA science, genealogical databases, and the meticulous work of investigators offered a chance to finally give the victim a name. The decades-old silence was about to be broken, and the story of Ernest Emerson Carter would finally emerge from the shadows. For over 3 decades, Ernest Emerson Carter's identity was lost to time. His skeletal remains, discovered by chance along Walcott Road in Franklin County, Ohio, lay quietly in the soil, untouched by justice, overlooked by the world. Investigators tried everything they could in 1989. They collected evidence, ran tests, and reached out to families of missing persons. But the tools of the era were limited. They had fragments of a life, but no story, no name, no closure. Decades passed. Generations of detectives, coroners, and forensic scientists carried the weight of this unsolved mystery on their shoulders. Each unanswered question, who he was, how he had lived, and how he had died, lingered in their minds. For the public, it was just another cold case, another anonymous set of bones. But for the investigators, the whispers of a lost life never faded. Ernest Emerson Carter mattered. He was someone's family. He was someone's story that deserved to be told. In 2024, hope finally glimmered. The Franklin County Coroner's Office, partnering with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the nonprofit Porchlight Project, decided to apply modern forensic genealogy to the case. Othram, a Texas-based forensic lab, received the DNA samples and began the painstaking process of creating a genetic profile. Using forensic-grade genome sequencing, genealogists combed through family trees, tracing connections and distant relatives, following the faintest threads left behind in a 36-year-old mystery. Then, the breakthrough came. A match, a single male relative emerged from the labyrinth of DNA, finally giving a name to the silent remains. Ernest Emerson Carter. Born in 1923, lost but no longer forgotten. The revelation was not just a scientific triumph, it was a profoundly human one. After 36 years, a life erased from memory was acknowledged, a story reclaimed from the shadows. The team's collaboration, patience, and tireless pursuit of justice had given dignity back to Ernest, proving that even decades later, science and compassion could converge to restore identity, restore memory, and restore respect. It was a reminder that every human life matters, that no one should be forgotten, and that even in the coldest, loneliest corners of a case file, hope can endure. Now, before we dive deeper into how investigators pieced together the evidence and traced Ernest's life, I want to ask you, where are you watching from? Share in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss the next incredible story of justice restored. Once Ernest Emerson Carter's identity was finally uncovered, investigators faced the delicate task of piecing together the fragments of a life frozen in time. They weren't just examining bones, they were reconstructing a story, honoring a life, and confronting decades of unanswered questions. Every scratch, every angle of the skeletal remains told part of a narrative that had been silenced for 36 years. Law enforcement turned their focus to Carter's connections, his possible movements, and the life he may have lived before his mysterious disappearance. They reviewed decades-old police reports, witness statements, and local records, determined to find any hint that could explain how and why he ended up along Walcott Road. Every lead, no matter how small, became a potential thread to pull the story together. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation worked hand in hand with the Franklin County Coroner's Office, using the modern tools that previous generations lacked. Forensic genealogy had provided the breakthrough, but the human touch, interviews with distant relatives, community members, and historical neighbors brought context and depth. Genealogists and detectives collaborated to reconstruct Carter's family tree, verifying connections and filling gaps with painstaking care. Samples collected in 1989, preserved meticulously by the coroner's office, became priceless keys. DNA from bone fragments, once indecipherable, was analyzed with the precision of 21st-century technology. The lab reconstructed a genetic blueprint, confirming matches across family lines. The remains weren't just a name, they were a link to living relatives, a long-awaited closure for descendants who had spent decades with unanswered questions. This process wasn't just technical, it was deeply human. Investigators reflected on the life behind the evidence, a man who had once walked neighborhoods, whose experiences and memories were now lost to time, whose story had waited patiently to be acknowledged. Every step of evidence gathering, from lab work to genealogical mapping, carried a profound weight, the responsibility to give dignity to a life that had been anonymous for more than 3 decades. By combining archival research, DNA technology, and genealogical detective work, the team didn't just identify Ernest Emerson Carter, they restored his story, showing the enduring power of persistence, compassion, and scientific innovation. This was more than a solved cold case. It was a tribute to human life, a promise that no one is truly forgotten. With Ernest Emerson Carter's identity confirmed, the focus shifted to understanding the circumstances surrounding his life and eventual death. Investigators sought to uncover not only who he was, but how a man's life could vanish from community memory for more than 3 decades. Though little was known about Carter's personal life, researchers pieced together what they could. He was born in 1923, had family connections in Ohio, and had lived in the Franklin County area at some point. Carter's life appeared ordinary on the surface, yet gaps in records and the lack of public information painted a picture of someone whose final days were shrouded in mystery. There were no clear links to violent behavior, nor signs that he had been targeted by anyone, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Law enforcement worked carefully, interviewing distant relatives and tracing genealogical threads, hoping to reveal patterns or connections that might explain how his remains ended up along Walcott Road. The case illustrated the unpredictable nature of cold cases. Often, the victim's story is incomplete, and the evidence is decades old, leaving only whispers of the past. Carter's death highlighted the fragility of human life, the anonymity of those who disappear without a trace, and the importance of preserving evidence. The painstaking collection of genealogical and DNA data, combined with the cooperation of family members, provided not just identification, but context, humanizing the skeletal remains that had lain unidentified for so long. While the investigation did not reveal foul play or a criminal suspect tied to Carter's death, it underscored a powerful truth. Even the most silent lives deserve recognition, and every human story has value. Through the dedication of law enforcement, forensic genealogists, and the community, Ernest Emerson Carter's life and his mysterious end would finally be acknowledged. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more incredible cold case stories solved decades later, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. After decades of silence, the discovery of Ernest Emerson Carter's identity brought relief, closure, and a renewed sense of purpose for the investigators who had never stopped seeking answers. The skeletal remains, long forgotten in files and cold storage, had finally spoken through the voice of science. For the first time in 36 years, Carter's family and the community could place a name on the anonymous figure found along Walcott Road and acknowledge his life. The breakthrough was made possible by a partnership between Franklin County Law Enforcement, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the nonprofit Porchlight Project. Using advanced forensic genealogy techniques, investigators were able to trace a male relative's DNA back to Carter, confirming that the remains belonged to him. What was once an anonymous set of bones had become a human story, a life lived, and a family's missing piece restored. Though the details surrounding Carter's death remain sparse, the circumstances of how he died are still unclear. The case is far from a cold statistic. It is a reminder that every person deserves dignity, and that time does not erase the importance of human life. Forensic scientists, genealogists, and law enforcement worked tirelessly, combing through decades-old evidence, building family trees, and connecting genetic dots, demonstrating that persistence and technology can rewrite histories once thought permanent. Carter's identification is more than a solved mystery. It is a triumph of modern science and human determination. It emphasizes that no case is ever truly closed when there are people committed to seeking the truth, even after decades. The painstaking work not only honored Carter's memory, but reinforced a crucial principle. Every missing person has a story, and every life is worth remembering. As we reflect on this remarkable resolution, it's a moment to appreciate the dedication of those who refuse to let forgotten stories remain buried. From law enforcement officers to forensic genealogists, every individual who contributed to this case reminds us that justice and truth can transcend time. Where are you watching from? Share with us in the comments. If you want to witness more incredible cold case stories and learn how decades-old mysteries are solved with modern science, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Don't miss a single revelation. Every story deserves to be told.